Hello, every parent is an educator. I really believe that every parent out there is an educator. And it's really something you can think about no matter what you do. If you're a parent, you're educating your child. I want to talk a little bit right now about education and skills when it comes to first grade and first grade mathematics, especially when it comes to recognitions and writing numbers. You really want to make sure your child is able to read numbers that are presented to them. You also want to make sure that they can write numbers like up to 120. So if they're writing out 75, 21, 11, whatever that might be, 90, that your child is able to write numbers. So not only read numbers, but write numbers and also be able to recognize numbers when they're presented to them in a certain way. Got some examples of that and some explanation right here coming up. Okay, so let's talk about reading and writing numbers and a few things you can do really quickly to help your child know how to do this a little bit better. Now, we already talked about counting and being able to count up to 100 or 120, but you also want to be able to make your child be able to count from any number. So let's say we know that we have to count 2, 4, 6, that your child can count by 2, or that your child knows how to count by 5, which is really great in the first grade. You want to be able to count by 2 or by 5 or by 10, but you also want to be able to eventually have your child be able to count up to 120 from any number. So let's say, for example, you start out at 20. Your child should be able to say, okay, 20 and then 21, 22, 23, and kind of go all the way up there up to 120. Should be able to do that. Let's say, for example, in another example, let's say you started at 75. Your child should be able to eventually say, okay, 75, then 76, 77, 78, and go all the way up to 120 from there. So being able to count up to 120 from any number is kind of building their fluency and their efficiency with it. But not only that, what this starts to be able to do is to make sure they can read and write these numbers. So let's say, for example, you want to make sure that your child can actually recognize what the numbers are. If they see a number that like 75 or 21 or whatever, they can actually read it and write it and understand what it is. So let's talk about that for just a second. So let's say we have an example here and we have 20 balls. And your child can recognize that, hey, this is a group of 20, that's 20. And they may even see something like this on a worksheet or an assignment. And then you have one more ball over there, so that's 21. So your child should be able to recognize that that's 20 and that's 1, that's 21, and also be able to write the word 21 and be able to say the number and read it 21. So not only should your child be able to count, but your child should be able to do these things as well. So when you're thinking about first grade, think about numbers up to 120. And things you might be able to do with that. One, make sure your child can read the numbers. So he or she is able to actually read the numbers and recognize them in written form and in numerical form. Number two, make sure your child can write the numbers. Your child is able to write the numbers up to 120 and recognizes what they are. And if they see these numbers, number three, they can recognize them if they're grouped together in a certain way on an assignment or a piece of paper. Some things for you to think about.